The entire history of the Byzantine Empire in 15 minutes. Introduction 0-130. When we think of empires, we think of Rome. But what if I told you that Rome never truly fell? What if the greatest empire of the ancient world simply transformed, moved east, and survived for another 1,000 years, outlasting the so-called Dark Ages, the fall of Western civilization, and even the rise of Islam? Welcome to the story of the Byzantine Empire, the most powerful, sophisticated, and misunderstood civilization in history. This is the empire that preserved ancient Greek and Roman knowledge, invented the concept of international law, built the greatest church the world has ever seen, and held back Islamic conquests for over 400 years, buying Europe the time it needed to survive. But how did it begin? And how did it fall? Let's go back to the beginning. Part 1. The birth of a new Rome, 130 to 330. In 330 AD, the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great made a decision that would change the course of history. He moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to a small Greek colony called Byzantium, which he renamed Constantinople, the city of Constantine. Why? Because the western half of the empire was crumbling. Barbarian tribes were pressing against the borders, the economy was in freefall, and Rome itself had become a city of decadence and political chaos. Constantinople, on the other hand, was a jewel. Sitting at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, straddling the Bosporus Strait, it controlled the trade routes between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. It was virtually impregnable, surrounded by water on 3 sides and protected by massive walls on the 4th. But Constantine did more than just move the capital. He also made Christianity the official religion of the empire. This was a seismic shift. For centuries, Rome had persecuted Christians. Now the emperor himself was one. Over the next century, the eastern and western halves of the empire drifted further apart. In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire finally fell when the Germanic chieftain Odoacer deposed the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus. But while the West descended into the Dark Ages, the East thrived. The Eastern Roman Empire, what we now call the Byzantine Empire, didn't just survive, it flourished. Part 2. Justinian and the Golden Age, 330 to 600. The greatest of all Byzantine emperors was Justinian I, who ruled from 527 to 565 AD. His ambition was nothing short of the restoration of the Roman Empire to its former glory. Justinian was born a peasant. He rose through the ranks of the military and eventually seized the throne alongside his wife, Theodora, one of the most remarkable women in history. Theodora was a former actress and, by some accounts, a courtesan. But she was brilliant, ruthless, and fearless. When Justinian faced a revolt that nearly toppled his throne, the infamous Nika riots of 532, it was Theodora who convinced him to stay and fight rather than flee. Her famous words, "Royal purple makes the best shroud." Together, Justinian and Theodora launched one of the most ambitious campaigns of reconstruction in history. First, Justinian rebuilt Constantinople after the Nika riots had left it in ruins. His greatest achievement was the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. Completed in just 5 years, it was the largest cathedral in the world for nearly 1,000 years. Its massive dome seemed to float on a ring of light, an architectural miracle that still takes your breath away today. Second, Justinian reformed the entire legal system. His Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law, became the foundation of legal systems across Europe and eventually the world. Concepts like innocent until proven guilty, the idea that law should serve justice rather than power, and the distinction between public and private law all trace back to Justinian's code. Third, Justinian launched military campaigns to reclaim the lost Western territories. His greatest general, Belisarius, reconquered North Africa, Italy, and parts of Spain. For a brief, shining moment, the Mediterranean was once again a Roman lake. But Justinian's ambitions came at a terrible cost. The wars drained the treasury. The plague of 541, the first bubonic plague pandemic, killed millions, and the reconquered territories were soon lost again. Still, Justinian's legacy endured. The Hagia Sophia still stands, his legal code still shapes our world. Part 3. The Arab Conquests and Survival, 608-830. Justinian's successors faced an existential crisis that would have destroyed any other empire. In the 7th century, a new force exploded out of the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. Within a decade of the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 AD, Arab armies had conquered Syria, Egypt, North Africa, and Persia, territories that had belonged to the Byzantine Empire for centuries. Constantinople itself was besieged twice, in 674 and again in 717. How did the Byzantines survive? The answer is threefold. First, the walls of Constantinople. The Theodosian walls, built in the 5th century, were the most formidable fortifications in the medieval world. No army could breach them, not the Arabs, not the Bulgars, not the Rus. Second, Greek fire. This was the Byzantine navy's secret weapon, a mysterious incendiary liquid that burned on water and could not be extinguished. Its exact composition remains unknown to this day. It was like ancient napalm, and it turned the tide of many naval battles. Third, diplomacy. The Byzantines were masters of what we might call soft power. They used marriages, bribes, treaties, and cultural influence to manage threats without fighting. They turned enemies against each other. They made themselves indispensable as mediators and trade partners. By the 9th century, the empire had stabilized, and under the Macedonian dynasty, it entered a second golden age. Part 4, the Macedonian Renaissance, 830 to 1030. The Macedonian dynasty, which ruled from 867 to 1056, oversaw a period of extraordinary cultural and military revival. Emperors like Basil II, known as the Bulgar Slayer, expanded the empire's borders to their greatest extent since Justinian. Basil was a warrior emperor who personally led his armies into battle. His most famous campaign ended with the blinding of 15,000 Bulgarian prisoners, an act of cruelty that earned him his fearsome nickname, but also secured Byzantine dominance over the Balkans for centuries. But the Macedonian period was about more than war. It was a cultural renaissance. Byzantine scholars preserved and copied the works of ancient Greece, Homer, Plato, Aristotle, Sophocles. Without them, these texts would have been lost forever. It was Byzantine manuscripts that carried classical knowledge to the Islamic world and later to Renaissance Italy. The Byzantines also sent missionaries north. Saints Cyril and Methodius created the Glagolitic alphabet, the precursor to Cyrillic, to translate the Bible into Slavic languages. Their work converted the Slavs to Orthodox Christianity and shaped the culture of Russia, Serbia, Bulgaria, and Ukraine to this day. At its peak under the Macedonians, the Byzantine Empire controlled Anatolia, Greece, the Balkans, and parts of southern Italy. Constantinople was the richest city in the world. Its markets filled with silk from China, spices from India, and gold from Africa. Part 5. The Great Schism and Crusader Betrayal, 1030–1230. But the empire was also developing a fatal rift. For centuries, the churches of Rome and Constantinople had been drifting apart, over theology, over language, and over power. The Latin West and the Greek East had different liturgical practices, different interpretations of doctrine, and different ideas about who should lead Christendom. In 1054, the Pope and the Patriarch of Constantinople excommunicated each other. This great schism split Christianity into Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, a division that persists to this day. Then came the Crusades. In 1095, the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I asked the Pope for military help against the Seljuk Turks, who had conquered most of Anatolia, the empire's heartland. What he got instead was a series of increasingly destructive holy wars that progressively weakened Byzantium while claiming to help it. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 was the ultimate betrayal. Instead of fighting Muslims, the Crusaders sacked Constantinople itself, the greatest Christian city in the world. They looted its treasures, raped its inhabitants, and set up their own puppet empire on Byzantine soil. The Hagia Sophia was converted into a Catholic cathedral. Although the Byzantines recaptured Constantinople in 1261, the empire never recovered. It was a shadow of its former self, surrounded by enemies, bankrupt and dying. Part 6. The Fall, 1230–1430. The final act of the Byzantine Empire was both tragic and heroic. By the 15th century, the empire consisted of little more than Constantinople and a few scattered territories. The Ottoman Turks had swept through Anatolia and into Europe. Constantinople was an island in an Ottoman sea. On May 29, 1453, the Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, just 21 years old, launched his final assault on the city. He brought 80,000 soldiers and a weapon the world had never seen in combat before. Massive bronze cannons, including the famous bombard built by the Hungarian engineer Orban, whose walls were 26 feet long and could fire stone balls weighing over half a ton. The defenders, led by Emperor Constantine XI, Palaiologos, numbered fewer than 8,000. They fought with everything they had: swords, spears, old cannons, and sheer courage. For 53 days, they held out. On the final night, Constantine XI removed his imperial regalia and charged into the oncoming Ottoman troops. His body was never identified. The last Roman emperor died as the empire fell around him. The city fell. Mehmed rode his horse into the Hagia Sophia and converted it into a mosque. The Roman Empire, which had begun 2,200 years earlier with a small settlement on the Tiber River, was finally truly dead. Conclusion: 1430–1500. Or was it? Because the Byzantines left behind a legacy that shaped our world more than most people realize. Their legal code forms the foundation of modern law. Their scholars preserved ancient Greek philosophy and literature. Their missionaries created the Cyrillic alphabet and brought Christianity to the Slavs. Their art and architecture inspired centuries of creators. And their strategic genius, the walls, the diplomacy, the Greek fire, kept civilization alive during its darkest hours. The Byzantine Empire lasted for over 1,000 years. That's longer than any other empire in human history. And yet most people know almost nothing about it. Until now. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about understanding why our world looks the way it does. I'll see you in the next one.